All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tony Cockmo, president of the DFW BIM Infrastructure Group. Welcome to Expert Elite World. And today's guest is Dan. Dan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, how you doing, Tony? Thanks for having me. I'm Dan Stine. I'm the director of design technology at Lake Plato Architects, based in San Antonio, Texas. We have an office in Austin as well. I have a blog called BIM Chapters that gets something like 20 to 30,000 views a month, depending on how interesting the topics are that week. I've written 14 textbooks. One of them is the #1 Revit book in North America, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
I teach graduate architecture students at NDSU and landscape architects as well. I'm currently the chair of the IES BIM Standards Committee, the International Illuminaire Society.
Okay.
And I'm an Autodesk Expert Elite and member of AIA and CSI.
You keep pretty busy like myself. You're involved in a lot of things. So, So what do you currently do? I guess, where do you work at? What do you currently do at your job?
Sure. Well, when I started at Lake Plato, which I moved here from Minnesota, if you can see my Minnesota license.
There you go.
Just over a year ago during the pandemic, which was kind of crazy, maybe a whole separate podcast on that excitement. But I actually created or filled a new position in the firm, the director of design technology. The firm is always and still does have a BIM manager.
Yeah.
Stephen Campbell in our office, he actually used to work at Revit before Autodesk bought the company, and then he worked at Autodesk for like 17 years. And so my role is I spend about 40% of my time working on IT and BIM/CAD related things, which might be anything from renewing software to looking for new software. We just recently took another look at Test Fit, for example, in our urban planning group.
Oh yeah, I've played with it.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And then so I spend another 40% of my time working on building performance topics. So I have a lot of experience in early energy modeling and lighting analysis. And then the remainder of my time is actually like marketing and PR stuff like I'm doing right now.
So you've written a lot of books. Do you also have courses online?
I have a couple. They're probably a little harder to find than most. So my books come with videos, like the Revit and the Autocad books that I have come with a whole bunch of videos that you watch through a unique code in the book through the publisher's website. Michael Kilkelly from Arc Smarter, he's more architectural focused. You may not have heard of him. He hosts a small number of courses that I have on his site. One is on early energy modeling. One is on real-time rendering with Revit and Enscape. And then the other one is a Revit MEP focused course on working in the context of remodels and alternate. So dealing with a bunch of complex things in the Revit MEP world with phasing and design options and all that fun stuff.
You mentioned Airscape. That's a cool little product. For its price, I think it's pretty amazing for its price, what it can do.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that. Some things you'll probably get a kick out of too, but just a little backstory there. I've been using Enscape and working with the folks there since it came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And I have a monthly meeting with their CEO. And in 2019, they actually had me go to a bunch of conferences with them all over the world, actually.
Oh, cool.
As an expert customer at their booth in the exhibit hall.
There you go.
I got to go in 2019, not too long ago, Autodesk University London.
Oh, cool.
Built, which used to be called RTC, a few months later in Scotland, and then AU Las Vegas and Midwest U in Minneapolis. So that was pretty cool. And some of the interesting things that I've done with Enscape. So my previous firm was multidisciplined, had full civil, and we had done some pretty cool landscape architecture and an urban street renewal project and a bridge project where we had it all modeled and looking really awesome in Enscape and doing full VR. So the MnDOT, for example, was looking at this historic bridge renovation and restoration. And there's these abutments that, stuck out too far, but it was this amazing stone, bridge. Yeah. So they're trying to find a happy medium between current compliance where you're not going to, headbutt your car into the side of the abutment versus this thing that stuck out really far. And so they were using VR to do that. And then another cool thing I played with in Minneapolis, St. Paul, there's this ACEC user group that consisted mainly of civil folks, but also mechanical and electrical and with one of the firms there that hosted the meetings a lot and were pretty tech savvy, we had worked together on a workflow to go from InfoWorks to Enscape. Unfortunately, Enscape only really works in a lot of things, just nothing civil related. So it works in Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, Vectorworks, Archicad, but InfoWorks can export to like FBX and some other formats, and so SketchUp and Rhino can import those, and then you can have these amazing renderings with actual grass on the ground, the actual blades of grass, and
for high like you see on Lumion and Twinmotion,
Yeah.
So cool. So when did you, if you recall back, started using Autodesk products? And what were you doing at the time?
Oh, sure. Yep. This. I'm going to totally date myself, but hold on one second. Well, actually, I can't grab it. So anyways, in the early 90s, I was using plain Autocad. I worked at an architecture firm, and it was just Autocad. And in fact, there was like a recession everybody knew was starting. And this firm had just gotten a fairly large public sector project. And the first CAD station was actually still in the box. So I was like, yeah, this is a good way to make myself important. And and that sort of worked out over the course of time. But yeah, mainly plain AutoCAD with some add-ins for rendering and the old stylus tablet, digitizer tablet, and all the commands on it to do architectural things.
Do you remember what version that you were working with?
Yeah, that would have been about AutoCAD R10 or 11, roughly. Yep.
Okay.
And then, of course, I started using Revit almost when it came out. My first book, which is actually my first Revit book, I should say, is copyright 2003, and it has Carol Bart's signature on it.
Oh, wow.
Former CEO of Autodesk, who went on to be the CEO of Yahoo.
That's cool. But so you dabbled with AutoCAD, you dabbled with Revit, you got some Enscape. So I guess as a, you said director of technology, so you get to play around with a lot of new gadgets, new technology, new software to see, I'm assuming, to see what best, what could improve workflows and efficiency with the company, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, what I do. I'm constantly, like you mentioned, TestFit. I've been playing with it because I do, design concepts and for developers and do apartment complex. I see the benefits of using that, that product, the parking lot tool is, it's cool if it's a perfect square rectangle parking lot or something, or garage, but calculating the amount of units, that we need to meet, be more profitable for the developer, percentage and ratios and stuff. I think that's pretty amazing, because if I don't have it, I have to design like several different concepts, try and get the building units to match and meet the zoning for the parking, so, and that's what's becomes a little challenging. And then still, what comes into play is open space requirements too. I got to meet that 20-30% open space requirements. And So yeah, that software is pretty cool. A little pricey to me. I've talked to him a couple of times, like, can you not bring down the price a little bit? I said 5,500 or something. I'm like, I was like, that's a little much. So to me, but I'm sure they said, well, you realize how much time we're saving, for all the different concepts you're doing. So it's kind of like sketch. It's kind of like the civil site designer from Bentley, Site Ops, which was rebranded. It was Site Ops. Now it's Civil Site Designer, I think is what it's called. That was pretty cool tool. I played with it a lot. Now I'm playing with that Civil Beyond for 3D modeling.
Is that the replacement for Geopack then, right? Or
no, it's a 3D modeling for, it's kind of like Twinmotion, but it's got a lot of animation built into it.
oh, I see.
It's a brand new one, just got released like a month ago. It's more for the civil people. But
what does that work against? Do you export from Civil 3D or?
Yeah, you can export. Really, what I'm gonna do is take it from InfoWorks straight to there, through this new 3D modeling software. So, another one that I don't know if you dabble with it. I'm not no expert in Revit. I'm probably a very, very green beginner. Is Modumate. I don't know if you've seen it. It's pretty cool. I said, wait a minute. This thing is very, very user friendly. I've been testing and playing with it. Definitely go check it out.
What's it called again?
Modumate.
Modumate.
Yep. So MODMUTE. Yeah. Modumate. Yeah.
The add-in for Revit, and what does it do?
It's kind of like a competitor to Revit, and it does everything Revit does, but it's simpler. So, I consider Revit like probably the third hardest software to learn. I think 3ds Max, then Civil, and then Revit.
Oh, really? I put Civil above Revit, but I guess
I don't know. I
think MVP is pretty complicated.
Yeah, I think Civil is the biggest package because there's just so much stuff built in.
Yeah.
But yeah. So okay. So next question I have is that you become an expert elite. How did you train to be where you're at now? Were you self-taught? Were you taking classes? How did you go from A to B?
Yeah, I mean, in school, I had some AutoCAD classes. Revit didn't even exist then, but mostly it's all self-taught. Yeah. I mean, having a particular challenge in a, when you're working on the design of a building, and actually for the first 13 years, I actually worked on projects, and so now for the last 16 years roughly, I've pretty much been in BIM manager, CAD manager, now design technology manager. So I'm just sort of a technology geek. I have all the gadgets at home, like Alexa, ask Sense how much power I'm using.
Your home is using 1,082 watts.
1,082 watts. Yeah. So and then of course, once you get to the point where you're teaching at Autodesk University or writing books on it, you really double back and challenge yourself to make sure you know what you think testing things to make sure it's the right way to do it, and there's not other variations that you didn't think of.
Yep. I don't know how exactly how Revit, if you can do things differently in Revit for Civil 3D, you can build something 4 different ways in Civil 3D.
Yeah.
Just doing a simple task, you can do it 4 different ways. I don't know if you can do the exact same thing in Revit or not.
I mean, that's usually the case. Well, one other interesting thing in terms of technology and always sort of looking for ways to do things different and better. My previous firm, right before I left, the pandemic had started, and we had been kicking it around loosely and then tried really hard, although it was, I think, still too early. To be honest, I'm not really sure if they fully cracked the nut, because I don't think it was crackable. Is doing full-on complicated Civil 3D projects in BIM 360 because everybody had high-powered laptops, and we'd get the project set up so that the data shortcuts and the XREFs were all working, and then all of a sudden we just get into this endless loop of desktop connector errors. And
there's still some issues.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think they've come a long ways. They've been working on it pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not quite there, but I know people are trying, and Autodesk will need some input. The people that are trying, they want somebody to try and give the input. That way they can find the bugs, find the issues, and resolve it. So
yeah, I've had some pretty good developed some pretty good contacts over the years at Autodesk. In fact, I think it was not maybe 5 years, but about 4 years ago, I went to Autodesk's office in Shanghai, China for a week to do like a full week of development testing.
yeah,
And on the floor that I spent the entire week on were the Revit developers and the Civil 3D developers. Are like separated, but on the same floor.
yeah,
That's where really cool. I first saw the example. It was still in beta of publishing a Civil 3D model to BIM 360 and then linking that into Revit.
hmm
And then fast forward, once that came out at my previous firm, we started using it on a super complicated $1 billion hospital. That's when you go into one side of the building, it's 6 stories up to go into the other side. That's just a block and a half away. So super steep site, really complex landscape architecture where we had they have at that previous firm, LHB, some super good, super capable Civil 3D people who are making curb cuts and the actual curb profile for islands and ped ramps and the crown and the roads and the alignments. So when you bring that into Revit as a link through BIM 360, it was a perfect representation of the surface. And every time Civil published, I would just have to open the Revit model and it would update. And it was so accurate with, and also with shared coordinates that I was given the contractor's layout specialist, northing and easting values out of Revit of the existing corners, because it was also a remodel project. And he would go out and verify that was perfectly right.
Yeah. No, that's good. When I do modeling, I'm still doing a lot of engineering projects. I run and manage my own projects. And I try to model exactly everything from landscape, every landscape steps, even steps, everything, the ramps, everything. I model everything that way. If I did have to share it to a contractor or anybody, it's perfectly modeled for them. So I do very detailed modeling. So
I mean, it's beautiful in Civil 3D, but when you get that into Revit, like wrapped around the building, it's so amazing. We just did this on a Lake Plato project for a massive public plaza / park in Scottsdale, Arizona that we're working on. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Are you part of any other Autodesk organization? Are you on the beta? I know I'm sure you're probably other committees. I don't know how many committees I'm on, but I'm on the beta too for multiple platforms. I'm more on the civil side from AutoCAD and InfoWorks and Civil 3D and Map Recap.
Sure. I've been on a bunch of Autodesk Sprint demos. I'm on 2 right now. One is related to their early energy modeling. In the past, I've been on some MEP ones, like most recently, the feed through lug for power panels. At my previous firm, we actually invented this product called the Electrical Productivity Pack that CTC Software ended up selling. And now it's grown into MEP Productivity Pack, but our firm had completely created the electrical side of that. So anyways, right now, early energy modeling, and then another one related to some general Revit things like the recent ability to link PDFs and publish PDFs. Revit actually hadn't had that for a long time. So some beta stuff I'm in. I'm a member of the Autodesk Developer Network, which is mostly because I'm an author. It's usually a really expensive thing for developers to have like resources directly with Autodesk to do add-ins and stuff. But they also do use that as the mechanism for authors. And so every year, like just before, the end of the first quarter, beginning of second quarter, when all the new stuff comes out, they have a special presentation for authors through the Autodesk Developer Network. And it's a way of showing us what's actually going to be in there, because we've seen the beta for the whole year. And like that civil to Revit thing, that took them basically 2 years to totally get that dialed in. So if I would have wrote about it in my book, and it wasn't in that version of Revit, would have been in probably big trouble, right? So Autodesk Developer Network, and then the last one actually is I'm on the Autodesk Executive Council for Architecture.
Mhm.
Includes a bunch of CEOs of some big firms, and
Yeah.
recently we had one of our partners on that. But now that I'm at the firm in this particular role, the reins for that have been passed to me.
So do you do any kind of, I guess, are you strictly on more of the technology and support? You don't do any design? Do you
Correct.
do design for the project?
Yeah, I don't do it. I don't work
Okay.
directly on projects anymore.
Okay. All right.
I mean, not in terms of design though. I do some analysis. Like recently I did an embodied carbon study for one of our projects, and we're actually in the process of hiring somebody who is meant to help our building performance group. But I'm a team player, so whenever something's needed, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and help.
Cool. So where do you think, Autodesk always tells us, the roadmap, but I guess where would you want AutoCAD to be in, 5-10 years?
Well, AutoCAD or Revit?
Revit, let's say Revit.
Yeah.
Where would you want it to be if you had the control and say, okay, this is where we're going? Where would you want that route to go?
Well, I think they need to continue to work on collaboration, like the Civil 3D feature that unfortunately I don't see a lot of people using. So
True.
Collaboration. I think the BIM 360 ecosystem is just going to continue to evolve such that people can't afford not to just have all their stuff there, which has other benefits like extra protection from ransomware attacks and but the whole ecosystem they're building with cost estimating and clash detection in the cloud against the cloud models, and so I see that continuing to evolve and make collaboration better. Like we're an architect only firm, so we work, like more than half of our projects are national. So we're always working with MEP, structural civil, that's all over the country, and being able to collaborate in BIM 360 is great, and especially down the road when Civil 3D is working in BIM 360 properly, like we just spoke about. And I don't necessarily want expect Revit to do everything for everybody. They need to just continue. I think one of the reasons it's got such staying power is same with AutoCAD, as its API, where you can make it do other things, right? We actually hired, since I've been here, we hired a developer, 130 people. We don't have our own developer in house. It's just not practical. So we hired a guy, and literally one guy that works for himself out in the Northeast, and made a couple of really cool Revit add-ins for us. But again, collaboration and the ability to model complex things properly, that's always a challenge. I guess.
So what are your thoughts? I've seen a company do this, that they are trying to use Revit as their purely landscape software. To me, Civil 3D would do a better job, but have you seen that route where some companies are trying to use Revit as a landscape software and do all their landscaping in Revit?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. I actually wrote an AEC Bytes article on just kind of civil tools as it relates to architects, and then followed up with a blog post on my site with add-ins for Revit that do civil stuff. And I think in general, the best scenario probably is that, Civil 3D is the most robust tool for doing civil, for grading and things like that. So that's probably the best place for pure civil stuff. I think we as architects often need to do some basic landscaping stuff early on in a project before civil's involved, and we might have an existing surface, finished grade, existing conditions kind of thing. So we need some tools. The the problem though is just saying that, you know, there's a lot of people that say, oh, Revit sucks in land site design. And, you know, I'm not sure that they're ever going to make it not suck. It's not the goal of Revit, right? And that, you know, you link in a big file with large coordinates and you get errors. And, you know, there's like a fundamental math problem, it seems, with Revit and in large coordinates. I mean, that shared coordinates can account for that, but there's problems with people linking in a site that's, you know, like in CAD, it's thousands of miles away from the origin.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in Revit, it brings it in sort of centered on Revit's origin, but where the site is still really far from Revit's origin. And if you're not careful to move that to the right spot, I've seen people zoom into that far away spot and start modeling Revit, and Revit geometry literally looks like it went through a garbage compactor or trash disposal. It's like all crumpled up. A circle looks like it has, you know, 10 sides to it. It's not a circle.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I teach landscape students at NDSU, and my previous firm, I had taught a whole bunch of landscape architects Revit techniques, but a lot of what they were doing was more supportive of visualization stuff, like placing trees, because you can make really amazing looking endscape trees that sort of blow in the wind. They don't have enough options yet, but in terms of species. And
to me, it's like, and this is my opinion, not a landscape architect, I just feel like so much time is being wasted doing all these hand pencil drafting when there's options where you can make a drawing look like pencil drawings, you know, and you can make objects and blocks look like they was hand sketch. And that way things are to scale, they're easier to move, besides having to redraw stuff in the kind of the paper see-through drawings, sketches they do. I just like, okay, I just saw you do that. It's been a whole week to sketching that up, doing two concepts where I probably could have done it in CAD in one day. And because of the flexibility. And now, because let's say the project moves forward, I don't have to redraw it again because it's already done in CAD, versus somebody that sketched it now has to turn around and convert it into CAD. And, you know, yes, I could probably use raster design to where I can extract certain objects and lines from Autocad using the raster design based on color and some of the vector lines it can pick up. But I just think that transformation needs to happen at some point. Manual drafting, landscaping has to go away because just too much time is being done when you can probably do it in CAD and make it look like a sketch. And I knew some girl that was a landscape was a site planner, and she was able to create templates, and I helped her do it. And she was able to make it look like it was kind of a hand sketch, you know? So I just think that at some point that needs to fade away. I know it's just been in the industry for so long and no one wants to go away from it, but at some point, all this landscape drafting needs to go straight to CAD. You know, I'm hoping eventually it'll happen. You know, I'm building my own template for landscaping where I'm doing simple concepts for site planners or developers to make it look like not SketchUp, but hand drafting. So,
so I think there's definitely a place for hand sketching early on in the design, whether it's bringing hand sketching possibly too far in some scenarios. Similar could be said about, we use a fair amount of SketchUp, and sometimes that's taken too far. So there's definitely a balance there. I mean, when you're sketching early on, you're able to make quick changes and try different things, right? But yeah, I see your point. And
so next question I have, let's see what's sorry. I guess I'll give you my thoughts about where I would want to see AutoCAD go, is to have a workspace that would allow you to go back and forth between different softwares. And that's where I would want to go, is, hey, I can flip my workspace. Now I'm in Revit Lite. Maybe I didn't buy the full-blown Revit, but I now have a Revit Lite. So you can have different versions of these products where now I can switch it over to InfoWorks, switch it over to Recap, switch it over to Navisworks. And now I'm just switching, the format, and still save it as whatever format I want, or have a brand new format that opens any file, any kind of version you're using.
So almost like Civil 3D has a start this $10,000 program as a $3,000 program, right? When the run Civil 3D as AutoCAD command in the start menu.
Oh,
I always joked that, I mean, now you have to buy it on subscription, but right, Civil 3D used to be almost $10,000 a seat for a network license.
Oh yeah.
And I always joked with people, see this command here, you can start this $10,000 program as a $3,500 program. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the core code is so different, but over time, I expect them to normalize a lot. Interestingly enough, Nvidia is working on sort of cracking that nut with Omniverse, taking the USD format that Pixar, I think, invented, and they have connectors, they call them, that tie in. I don't know if they have one for AutoCAD, but they have one for Rhino and Revit and SketchUp and Maya and 3ds Max, and so in that scenario, you can push data and have a live link into Omniverse.
Yeah.
And in there you can do things like physics and run like Grasshopper and Dynamo scripts and make heat maps of solar radiation on the ground and the building, and the ground might be coming from Rhino or SketchUp and the building's coming from Revit. So there are people trying to do that. It'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Is your company taking advantage of like AR, VR technology?
Yeah, actually quite a bit. So I've written a few blog posts. One recently, we're actually remodeling our office in San Antonio right now.
Okay.
Figured, well, it's mostly empty during the pandemic. Let's just do something that they've been wanting to do for years, but struggled with the logistics.
Yeah.
So we have a 3-story building that, about 100 people have desks in, and it's about a block and a half from the Alamo. So it's just right downtown.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so a perfect opportunity. We got the whole thing cleared out. And so whenever I think of AR, I'm always thinking of the Microsoft HoloLens, not just holding up a phone or an iPad. And so both at my previous firm and then now at Lake Plato, we've had a lot of opportunities to mess around with the HoloLens too.
Yeah.
At my previous firm, we actually had a Trimble XR10, which is the hard hat with the HoloLens 2 repackaged into the hard hat. And that thing actually just pops out of the hard hat. You can put it on any standard hard hat. It just hooks into the clips, but it has the bone conducting headphones so that you can still have over the ear protection on a job site. And it also has a full flip up visor. So when you always have your peripheral vision, but on a job site, you're next to a big hole in the floor, it might be a good idea to flip that up. But in our office here in San Antonio, we use the add-in for Revit, and they also have, when you install it, it's like an add-in for AutoCAD and SketchUp and Revit called Fuser by Calic Studios.
Never heard of it.
They have the most robust like Revit to AR workflow I've ever seen. So the add-in to Revit, you click basically the publish diffuser command from Revit, and it pushes it out into their proprietary format. Because it knows about Revit, it actually understands all the categories. Revit doesn't have layers. Things just automatically go on the door layer or the door category and the wall category. So once you push it from Fuser into the HoloLens, it automatically associates a voice command with all those categories.
Oh, wow.
So you can say hide furniture, isolate columns, show all. So hide, isolate, and show. And then to position the model, it can either be like, scaled at 1 to 20 or 1 to 30 on a conference room table. I got to move my hands up. I'm doing all these gestures and they're down below the camera.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
And so you can put a virtual QR code in the model, or in Revit or in Fuser. There's actually a command to do it in either spot.
Yeah.
Then you print out the QR code and actually tape it to something that's going to still be there, like the elevator doors.
Yeah.
And then you just gaze at that QR code and it aligns the entire model at full scale to that location. And we were able to walk around the entire floor plate and even go up the stairs in the stairwell and walk out onto the next floor. And the whole hologram for the entire building still lines up. And it's pretty cool.
That is cool. I think that how good is the resolution with those HoloLens? I mean, it's a $5,000 VR headset. So how good is the resolution? I had some client came and showed me the first version, but I never got to test out the second version just to see how good the resolution is when you have that on.
Yeah, the resolution is definitely way better and it's way brighter than the HoloLens 1. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, good. Oh, let's see here. You can go ahead now and share your screen.
Yeah, I'll show you a blog post. So on the Lake Flato website, you can go to our blog called The Dog Run, and you can find this post about mixed reality at Lake Flato. So this is not the Trimble, but it's still they both use the HoloLens 2. So this is just a pure HoloLens 2.
Yeah.
And generally what you do in Revit, you're modeling existing stuff on a phase called existing. So that way you can peel off the existing and just export the new. So this is a screen capture from within the headset, like what the person wearing this was seeing. It's pretty wild. So there's the actual existing windows, and before you turned on the hologram, you were just seeing, the ceiling and the flooring.
Yeah.
Once you turn on the hologram, you can see how there's some spots because it's not actually anything solid. So if something really bright, you can see through that. But if there was a proposed wall or something between you and me, and we're only standing like 3 feet apart, I'd hardly be able to see you.
Oh, wow.
What's a little misleading here, though, and it takes a little bit to get your brain used to. And the HoloLens 2 has a wider field of view, but you still have your full peripheral vision totally open. Because if you're walking around a job site or something, you need to see that there's a piece of rebar and hopefully it has a red cone on it or something, right? But you need to see that stuff. So here's the HoloLens 2, and this was on a different floor. You can see there's some extra stuff in front of those windows. But you literally walk around the entire floor and even go up to the next floor, and all this stuff is still there. Here's the QR code that I taped to the elevator. And here's the 2 people on the design team checking out their design in full scale. One of the founding partners here, Ted Flato. So if you were to lay on the floor, you'd literally be looking underneath all the desks. So so here, when you sit, he was sitting at a virtual desk and experiencing the view from this vantage point. I was working with one of the architects for that hospital that I mentioned, and we were showing. Actually, in that case, it was VR, but showing some operating rooms and patient rooms. And the main design architect from Ewing Cole, who designed this operating suite, I said, because she accidentally jumped herself up on the operating table, so it was like she was standing, really high in the room.
Yeah.
If you were to lay down right now, it'd be like you were actually laying on the operating room table. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, she's literally laying on the floor in this conference room at the client space, checking it out. So here's 2 side-by-side views. This conference room actually has a bunch of the wall tore out, and there's going to be glass added there. And so when you turn on the hologram and you're looking at the same exact place, you can kind of see the TV, this TV, it's a little different scale, but you get the feeling that you're looking through that wall. You can't actually see the real windows because you're literally looking at a solid wall, but you get the sense that you're looking through that wall at all the furniture that you're going to see out there. There's some holes in the beams that you can see the virtual hole and the real hole actually line up. And then here's a scaled version of it where a bunch of existing stuff was hidden. So yeah, VR, another thing I've been doing a lot with is VR. We have found a lot of uses for the Oculus Quest 2. I have a HTC Vive Pro 2 that I'm testing right now. But one of the cool things that I just tested with the Quest 2 is the Nvidia Xr technology. So firing up a workstation instance on an Amazon server in Oregon, opening up full Enscape and hitting VR mode and having it stream full VR to my headset in San Antonio, Texas. That's wireless.
Yeah.
With my home Wi-Fi 6 system and able to turn, and it's sending my head movement back and responding with the move in a reasonably good.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. I have a guy who's big into VR. He's like 2 doors down from me. He does programming and he plays with the Oculus Quest 2. And I'm going to be buying, I have the regular first original Oculus Rift, but I'm going to get the third Oculus Quest 3 that was going to come out, I think later this fall or Christmas or something. I'm going to get that one because I have a bunch of VR headsets. Most of the ones that I have on my shelf are the ones you put your phone in, different versions and stuff. Some of them have remote controllers and stuff like that, but I love playing around with the VR headsets and stuff like that. So, but he's showing me stuff like that he's trying to do. He actually works in a virtual world. So he got a keyboard that actually shows up in the VR headset while he's working in a virtual office. And I'm like, wow, okay.
It's similar to the experience in the Quest 2 now, like, or I'm sorry, the Microsoft HoloLens 2. When you first turn it on, for example, and you need to type in your password, there's a floating virtual keyboard sitting in front of you. I don't think you can use all your fingers, but you can basically be using 2 fingers at a time.
It was interesting because he was like, okay, I have my private office here. I'm going to take everything up in my chair. And then I have this virtual keyboard, this keyboard that works as a virtual. And you can pick an office. It looks, high resolution office in this virtual world. And he's sitting there working. He showed me, I put the headset back on. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. He's picking whatever office he wants and a great view of a city or a lake or something. So
yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Well, one of the great things about the Quest 2, even though it's meant to be like a standalone consumer version, you can get the link cable and make it a full-blown, same thing as a Rift, except for it's like 3.5K resolution and 90-degree field of view, I think.
Yeah.
But they just came out with a software update that enabled this, which is amazing. A wireless access point, like a 5G. I actually had one in my closet from when we moved to Texas and then got, this Wi-Fi 6 system after we got here, but pulled a wireless router out of my closet, plugged it directly into the laptop. So it's not even connected to the internet, just the laptop's connected to the wireless router.
Yeah.
And then the Oculus Quest 2 connects to that Wi-Fi access point, and again, full streaming Enscape VR.
Oh, wow.
In real time. And that's perfect. That's not like, 1,000+ miles away in Oregon.
That's really, really, really cool.
And not having a cable is the bomb, right?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
We have a client doing VR and I have to sit there or somebody has to sit there and hold the cable because you don't want your really important client to get all tangled up and fall over.
Trip over the wire. Like, oh no. There goes that project. Now we're getting sued.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna lose money. So, but that's pretty funny. So
yeah,
so
I'm
if you could share one tip. Go ahead.
One last thing about VR. I'm actually speaking it's about 2 weeks now in Dallas, advancing computational building design.
Yeah.
And it's on next gen VR. So a lot of the stuff that I just talked about is sort of packaged up into a nice presentation. And
when is that? When are you going to be here?
Yeah,
I have an event for 2 days here, and you might want to swing by. I have 2 other experts coming into town.
Yeah. Let's see here. It's in first week in October.
Oh, that you mean during AU?
Yeah, actually, one of my AU class I have to do from the hotel room.
Well, if you're in Dallas, just come swing by my office. I'll get you a space.
Yeah, I'll have to show you where it's at.
Yeah.
And so I just put it in the chat so you could
Okay.
see what my blog post about the conference that I wrote on BIM chapters.
So let me ask you this. So if you could share some, one or two tips about Revit, what would it be? You
Sure.
can talk about it, or you can maybe show a simple tip on Revit if you have time.
Well, I think first one you could just talk about is the need for model maintenance. Revit is a database, and way too often that sort of gets pushed on the back burner during the intensity of working on projects. So I have a blog post about model maintenance, and I wrote it about 2-3 years ago, and most of it's still completely relevant, and it's one of the top performing posts. But making a new local file from the central file every day is really important, because in the central file, when you go to sync with central, there's an option to compact central, and it says slow in parentheses after that. That's not something you want to run every day. I had somebody about a year or two ago say, my Revit saves so much slower than everybody else's. And I finally did a screen share, and the person immediately checked that box, like just wrote memory, and like, what did you check that for? Well, I do that all the time. Well, that's why it's taking so long. But so that thing goes through and cleans up some of the save history and optimizes the database basically. And then if you're just working in a local file that's not refreshed from the central file, every time you open Revit, it makes a copy on your C drive. And that's the local file that you're actually working in. So when you're working in BIM 360, that's sort of a moot point, but keeping the database optimized, and you don't want to purge too early. Like AutoCAD has a purge, Revit has the same command, but you end up losing things that are important, like fonts and dimension styles and materials and wall types if you purge too early. But another big thing in terms of model maintenance then is the warnings in Revit. That's something that's very rarely looked at, it seems. That's just my perspective. I guess there's a lot of people out there, so I don't know. A little judgmental. But there's some warnings in there that are really important, and some of them are pretty frivolous. I wish Autodesk would sort of prioritize those a little more. But really big ones have to do with things that are duplicated that form room boundaries. Revit's always trying to calculate the perimeter of a room, and when you open Revit, it's recalculating all that stuff. So having two walls that overlap, or this thing called a room separation line that's coincident with the wall is sloppy, but also really, really bad for performance. And then there's the other thing of literally things that are just duplicated on top of themselves, which can happen in a number of different ways, but chairs being duplicated. So that's just fundamentally a performance problem, but also potentially a schedule problem where you're getting too many quantities and things like that. The new versions of Revit have highly recommend people get to Revit 2022 as soon as possible. There's just so many cool new scheduling features and some geometry stuff like sloped walls and battered walls, and a lot of what I actually did a video for Autodesk on Revit 2022 when it came out, and I called it, these are my productivity now tips, productivity now new features, meaning that there's a ton of stuff in Revit this go around that are really useful to the end user.
Cool. Okay, we look like we're kind of running out of time. So my last question is, outside of the Autodesk world, what do you do anything in the local community, part of any kind of charities, anything, related to, I don't know if you have kids or family and stuff like that, you do scouts or something, church, do you have any kind of thing you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. So my kids are both college age now, but my wife and I both did Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts. And since we've been to Texas, super enjoyable opportunity. I volunteered at a vaccine clinic, a COVID vaccine clinic at a WellMed. Side benefit was I got a vaccine way earlier than my age group. But interestingly enough, because they want to make sure people aren't coming there just for that, and I exceeded the minimum, but there was like a minimum amount of time you had to volunteer, which is, kind of a tricky double-edged sword, right? You're amongst all these people all of a sudden, and not vaccinated, but it was still really cool. I was doing that early on when it was mainly senior citizens, and boy, it's just the gratitude and seeing a 90-some-year-old person like jump for joy after they got the poke.
Have you seen cool. A difference of just, I wouldn't say laughed out, just the people up north versus here in the southern style? Have you noticed the southern style version of Texan versus up north? Have you noticed it, experienced it?
Yeah, there's some big interesting differences. There's a saying, Minnesota nice, and honestly, I think Texas, just from my perspective, puts that to shame. I mean, people here have been so incredibly nice, like can't even believe it, kind of nice. We have great neighbors. Like, we've only been here a year, and the neighbor daughter was already watching our pets when we took a trip this last summer when my son was home from college. And the most bizarre thing of all, and maybe this is different over in Dallas, but it's in San Antonio, nobody ever honks their horn. Everybody drives crazy, but literally, I can't remember the last time I heard somebody lay on the horn because they got cut off.
No, everybody honks their horn here in Dallas. Okay. I don't know if you knew, but I lived in San Antonio for 6 years. When I came out of the Air Force, I lived there with my best friend. He was going to med school there, and I was my first engineering company out there off Bandera, off the main highway, Loop Highway. Yeah. I lived in San Antonio, went to San Antonio College there. So, after 6 years, like, okay, it's time for me to move to Dallas. It was a big pay jump, but it was a great time going to, living in San Antonio. It was, I don't know if it still is, but it was rated the most affordable housing in the United States. But the pay offsets it because you're not getting paid as high, but the cost of living was the most affordable in the United States. So
I think that's probably true. I mean, compared to Minnesota and state income tax, you figure in all that stuff. We spent about the same amount of money on a house and got a nicer house. Not necessarily, we didn't need a bigger one because our kids are old now, but older, still have rooms at home, but they're college age. So
I don't know about Minnesota, but you're enjoying the no state tax.
So. Yeah, I know. I mean, that all of that makes adds into the difference. People here had said property taxes were really high, but they were actually about the same as what we paid in Minnesota. So just everywhere is a little different. But here is definitely more affordable. And the winters, oh my gosh. I used to bike to work up north in -20. I biked year round in the winter. And I lived on a 500-foot elevation difference hillside between work and home. So the last winter was just a dream here. It was our first winter away from Minnesota. My wife was born in Florida and lived in the Mojave Desert in California and lived in Alaska.
So you basically experienced pretty much our worst winter ever in 40 years. The first year you were here, because
I got blamed by everybody for bringing the February 2021 storm, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was the coldest, but I mean, we had just 2 inches of snow, but 2012 we got like 6 inches of snow. It was crazy. Before that, I didn't see snow until it was 1988, and it was 6 inches of snow in East Texas. The rest of the time we might get 1 inch or nothing. So
then it melts the next day.
We got 2 cold days. That was it. It. So, but have you adjusted to the heat though? Have you adjusted to the heat? Some people.
Yeah, actually, it is kind of bizarre. This summer has been a little less intense than last summer. I remember going out and in 100-degree, upper 90s and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. But now this summer we're outside walking around the garden center. I'm like, oh yeah,
it's 90s. Get out every day for an hour, your body will eventually adapt to it. Trust me. And next, you really won't feel it. But if you're, now I'm in the office all the time. So I used to love the 100-degree weather. Now you get out like, oh man, it's really hot, so
hot and humid.
You'll get adjusted.
And really quick on the snowstorm, I mean, we fared pretty well. We're actually, where we live, it's close to a hospital, a fire station, and a couple of big data centers. And in fact, like 3 blocks away, Microsoft just bought like 33 acres. So there's a pretty protected power grid.
Yeah.
But I was still super worried about, having had pipes freeze north where it's designed, I lived in climate zone 7 and the frost depth is 5 feet. So footings were 6 feet. That's why you get a free basement out of the deal.
Wow.
So I was just super worried about pipes freezing, and luckily didn't have that.
I take heat over cold any day. I can't take cold, and I just don't know how people do it and out there and drive through sleet and inches and inches or foots going to work. And it's a risk, a life risk going to work every day in wintertime up there.
Yeah, driving is crazy, but I recently with the high value of used cars because of the pandemic and whatnot, I just traded in our 4-wheel drive for something a little more economical.
Yeah.
Everybody has 4-wheel drive up there.
Yeah. You just need
a truck. 500-foot hillside, right? Sliding sideways down a hill is pretty exhilarating.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this podcast with us, and we'll send you another invite when we do like a more in-depth CAD management training,
Sure.
and CAD managers and stuff like that. But I want to thank you for coming. Spend a little time with us on the Expert Elite World, and I hope you enjoyed it. And,
this was fun. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, and I'll let you know when the video's released, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah. I'll do a blog post right up on it. So awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yep.